Hello everyone, this is Rebecca Kokendorfer with homeschool.com. We're coming up on testing season. Many states require homeschoolers to take tests, plus we're getting ready for exit exams and AP exams and ACT and SAT exams. So I have 7 really good tips for you. 7 test-taking tips for a test-crazy world. Let's begin. Tip number 1 is know your state's requirements regarding testing. There are many different ways to do this. Homeschool.com has a list. I would not recommend going to your state's Board of Education. A lot of times that is not as helpful as you would think that it would be, but you can always contact a local homeschooler as well, or post your question here on homeschool.com's Facebook page, and the community will help you answer that question as well. So tip number 1, know what your requirements, your testing requirements are for your state. So remember, each state has different homeschooling laws. In California, for example, we don't require testing. There's a lot of noise out there nowadays. If you look further down in homeschool.com's feed, you'll see a big debate, a video going on about requiring testing for homeschoolers. But let me comfort you a little bit too about that, is that studies show that homeschoolers actually test higher than private school students and public school students on the SAT and ACT exams. So just to comfort you a little bit about that, in general, homeschooling is a very rich education and they tend to do really well on tests. It doesn't mean that you don't prep for the exam, right? But at least you know that historically, homeschoolers do really well academically and on standardized tests. All right, tip number 2, know your child's learning style and use it to help learn the material. Okay, so for example, an auditory learner, when they're reading the material, they might want to read it aloud because they might have better comprehension. Flashcards, of course, are very helpful as well, especially because, think about it, it's a kinesthetic operation. You're writing the vocabulary word or the science fact or the math formula, and then you're visually looking at it, and then maybe even add in saying it aloud, add an auditory component as well. Some younger children, they like to do their multiplication tables jumping on the trampoline, or younger children writing things in sand. So know what your child's learning style is and use that style to help you learn the material for the test. It just makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, tip number 3, study all along the way, not just right before the test. And what that means really is make those flashcards all along the way. Memorize those math facts and math formulas all along the way as part of your rich homeschooling education. Not necessarily for the test, but students who study all along the way, they have higher test scores. Test number 4, do lots and lots of practice tests. This will help your child become comfortable with filling in the bubbles, writing their name on the test, going back and forth between a test booklet and an answer sheet, and of course, learning from the material as well. And this ties in with tip number 3, take those practice tests all along the way and learn from them. Oh, which questions did I miss? What is the correct answer for that? So that you're learning as you go. And of course, nowadays it's so much easier, it's so easy to find lots and lots of practice tests, probably even for your particular state or whatever area that you're testing in. You can find them online. I moved to a new state and I had to retake my driver's exam, and there was an excellent driver's test exam on there. And every time I missed a question, it kept giving me that question again and again and again, and I ended up getting 100% on my exam. So see if you can't find a practice test like that that's online that helps you learn the material as you go. Tip number 5 is not only practice the test itself, but so important to practice the test conditions. Maybe even drive to the test site. And this is psychological. You want your child, your student, to become comfortable with test conditions. So that means find out what you're supposed to bring with you to the test. And don't scramble for that the morning of the exam at 7 in the morning. Have it in advance. The pencils, maybe there's a calculator allowed or not allowed. Have all those materials in advance. Maybe drive to the test site so that your student sees them. And of course, practicing these test conditions also includes having a good breakfast. Maybe even practice taking those exams at 8 a.m. or whenever the real test is going to be given, because that's a different factor too. So you want your child to be as comfortable as possible with testing conditions and the testing setting and the test itself. Tip number 6 is don't stress about the results. For example, maybe you don't even want to share the results with your child. Now, if it's a college entrance exam, that's a different game, right? Because your student, your child, is driving that bus. They're the ones that have decided that they want to take the exam, and they're learning from those test results. But for some younger children, I'm thinking of my youngest daughter here, it wasn't good for her to get the results. It created kind of a glass half empty scenario for her. And I understand that this is very common for many homeschooling families, many homeschooling children. So for example, she would get really good grades, in certain areas. And then there would be one area where the score was lower, and she didn't see all the high grades. She didn't see the high scores. All she saw was, I thought I was good at history. And suddenly now she has a negative self-fulfilling prophecy about not being good at history. So you decide if you want your child to see those test results. And then you get to also decide if you find these test results helpful or not. There's kind of a debate in the homeschooling community. Some parents like testing, other parents really hate it. So you get to decide for yourself if it's comforting for you, if you learn information from the exam, if it's helping give you direction for how you want to homeschool in the future. Remember, be good to yourself. When you look at these test results, it's not indicating the worth of your child. It's probably not even indicating the quality of their education or their intelligence. Sometimes these exams can be very random, especially in the younger grades, and they're just a game that we have to play in many instances. So don't stress too much about the results. Tip number 7, the last tip for you, is remember your educational goals, why you're homeschooling, okay? So if you have a test coming up, especially if it's a test that you've chosen or if it's a test required by your state, start in advance. But remember, the goal of your game is a rich education for your children, for your family, for you probably, because you're learning along with them. So remember why you are homeschooling, right? In many of the school settings, I feel kind of sorry for the teachers. I used to be a special ed teacher myself, and they have to teach to the test. You don't have to. And you're trying to give your children interest-led learning, meaningful educations. And so when you play the game, if you need to, or if you even want to take the test, just don't let it crush your spirit, okay? Remember why you're homeschooling. Lots of homeschooling families have lots of different reasons. For me, I wanted a better than average education for my children. I really felt that I could do a better job. And so that was always our goal. I set the bar pretty high for my children, and it really paid off. So one of my daughters is now getting her master's at the London School of Economics. And they say that to you, I say that to you a little bit to brag, of course, because I'm so proud, but also to let you know that homeschooling works well. Okay, so here, I hope that these 7 test-taking tips are helpful to you, and recognize that we are in a test-crazy world, so take it with a grain of salt. And in the comment section, please let each other communicate with each other if you'd like. Ask any questions that you might have about your state's laws. And this is Rebecca Kokendorfer with homeschool.com, and for this week talking about test-taking tips for a test-crazy world. Nice talking to you. Talk to you soon. Bye.